Hey guys, welcome back to the Thrive Podcast. Some of you may know me as Danny.
And I'm still Josh.
Still Josh.
Yep.
I'm here because the talent that should be here is not. And
I snuckered him into helping me out
yeah,
to get from behind the camera in front of the camera.
which has been quite
So,
the hassle today.
Yeah, it
Not
has.
gonna lie.
We've broken a few light bulbs.
Like, literally.
And
I forgot an SD card. I
Yeah.
literally showed up, set up the camera, turned it on, and there was no SD card. So that happened.
Yep.
And the light fell over. There's like shattered glass all over the floor.
Yep. Stuff you can't see.
Yeah.
We're here now, and I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about.
What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about time and time management. So, how do you manage your time?
Like, how do I try to manage it, or how
Sure.
do
Like,
I
so
actually manage it?
I get that there's different circumstances now as far as people have a lot more availability, I guess. There's not any more time than there is normally. There's still 24 hours in a day.
Feels like there is.
I know. But on a normal day, let's rewind back in time to like January or whatever. What would a normal day time-wise look like for you? When do you typically wake up? What time do you wake up?
So, in January, I would have been on actually a pretty early schedule. I was getting up at like 5, 6 every morning for work. And then, so for me, I cannot have a schedule without a routine. And what I mean by that is like, so my alarm goes off and I get out of bed and I do the exact same things every morning. I literally eat the same exact thing every morning. I kid you not.
4 raisins,
No,
3 Cheerios.
I have 3 whole eggs, right? Scrambled with spinach and a little bit of mushrooms. And I have 4 pieces of turkey bacon and 2 pieces of toast. One
Dash
with
of salt?
butter, one with peanut butter.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I have that, right?
So that would be kind of like what we talked about in the first episode of habits. Okay.
Yeah, see?
Okay.
And so I'll have that. And then I always like to get up early enough, though, so that I have like a 30-minute window afterwards and that's when I'll do my Bible reading. I like to eat, and I like to sit down with my cup of coffee, do my devotions and Bible reading, pray, and then that's when I'll head out the door. And that way it's like, because I'm in a very bad mood before I've eaten, so I do that, so like I feed myself, I feed my soul, and I leave.
Ooh,
See what I'm
solid.
saying? And
That's
then
good.
and then it's work, and then it's school, gym, and then like just the evening.
Nice. So, fast forward to the current.
I get out of bed at like 12 every day. I go to bed at 2. I have no schedule.
I drink coffee at 3 in the afternoon.
No, it's bad.
I made a bad decision a couple days ago. I drank coffee at like 6 in the evening, and it was like some strong coffee. And
stuff.
I could not go to sleep till about 2 in the morning.
You don't realize how much it affects you until
Yeah.
you
So you're like,
can't
okay, I
sleep.
want to go to sleep. Nope, can't.
I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, so you designate time for certain things.
Yeah, I have to have like an action associated with that. Otherwise, it like I just won't do it. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like in my mind, I have a time slot and an action associated with that time slot. And then that way, my body is just like, okay, this is what you're doing now. This is how you should feel now. And then da-da-da-da. Yeah.
That's cool. That's good. The verse that I had kind of clunking around in my head for this topic, it kind of talks a little bit about time, but there's the second verse is even more so. But so I'll read that and then kind of hear your thoughts on what you think. For the word of God, this is Hebrews 4:12 through 14. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates, even dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him, to whom we must give an account. Kind of creepy, huh? Not really. It actually should be really encouraging. 14 says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to a faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. What do you think about that?
I think so that passage in particular, the thing that every time jumps out to me is when it says, tempted like we were, and yet did not sin.
Yeah.
I think what I love about it is how it puts into perspective, in a way, just how messed up we are, in that he lived life as a man. He experienced the same, aspects of time, the same aspects of temptation, and yet he's still the perfect Christ that he is. And like you said, when you're reading it, it's like you have to be careful. And I think it's a good heart check to see how that affects you when reading it.
Yeah.
It's like, is this saying, okay, this is my perfect Christ that I serve, and he went through the same things I did, and yet is still perfect?
Yeah.
Or is it, oh crap,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The thing I love about this one too is talking about how, like you touched on, Jesus was tempted in everything we've been. Like there's nothing new that he's like, oh well, I wasn't tempted by that, especially in relation to how he spent his time. Like you look at some of the things that there were constantly people vying for Jesus's time, being like, oh, Jesus, come do this, or oh, hey, come do this. And there were some situations where Jesus would do it, and then there was other situations where Jesus would be like, I'm gonna peace out and go pray alone.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
And I think what's so interesting about that too is it's almost a form of temptation that I think we often miss, is like Jesus was a celebrity, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Like people swarmed to listen to him. Like he was probably one of, if not the most, I'm sure he was actually the most like watched individual at the time. Obviously they didn't have social media or
Netflix.
But just that fact that he was so, like, that didn't even touch him at all.
Yeah.
Like that amount of just eyeballs on him. And I know for me, for the longest time, like I didn't even think about that, but I was like, wait a minute, this in today's age, like, and I mean, at any time it turns people's heads, and yet that didn't even. He was so, like, he handled it so well that it didn't even cross my mind. You know.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many funny stories. If you look at the stories of Jesus with the lens of time and the things that he spent his time on, or the people that he spent his time with, and how he managed his time, is really, really fascinating to see. Looking at, okay, this took up a lion's share of Jesus' time. This took up a lot of time and resources for Jesus to go from here to here. And even geographically, looking at some of the things where it's like, okay, why did Jesus take that way? Why did Jesus go that spot? There was a lot of time spent on some of those places, but the things and the people and the stuff that happened in those spots was incredible, and some of the stuff that really has helped build our faith and grow our faith.
So you're just talking about how purely intentional literally everything he did was.
Yeah. I very much doubt that Jesus didn't have a pulse on every minute that he spent doing everything. Like he wasn't like stressing people out. Well, I mean, he did stress some people out, especially the planners. He's just like, no, I'm going to go over here. What? No, we like, planned on doing this. Everybody's hungry. But he definitely had okay, my father told me to do this, so I'm going to do this. My father told me to go over here, so I'm going to go over here. My father told me to withdraw, and whatever the father told him to do, he did. He was obedient to that. He didn't do anything that the father didn't instruct him to do, which is encouraging to us, and then also good for us to look at. Okay, what are the things? What are the people? What are the events that took up the most of Jesus's time, and what was his attitude with that? Was he like, it's taking so much time, all these hungry people. Yeah. Get a meal, get your own fish. Right? Like he had compassion on them. He was slow to anger with a lot of stuff. Then some of the other situations where it's like, man, he just like was like, you have wasted this, you have squandered this. I'm not letting up on this. It's interesting to see that. What do you think about? So we all get like, okay, the word of God is living, active, sharper than any double-edged sword. We've heard that one a lot. Dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. I mean, it's getting really specific there. Judges our thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Oftentimes we can get drawn to something. Sometimes the things we waste our time on take up a lot of our thoughts and attitudes. There are certain TV shows I have to be careful with watching because my attitude will shift after spending, the 45 minutes or whatever it takes to get through an episode, and I'll feel myself start to get angry, or feel myself to start to get a little, frustrated or tense, or like I'm so invested in the story. I've spent so much time in that story. It's hard for me to pull back out to reality. And it's like, oh man. So I don't know. Have you had any?
No, I do know what you mean.
Situations or entertainment or whatever that kind of does that to you?
Yeah, I think. So have you heard the saying that I think it's like you're the average of the 5 most people you spend the most time with. So when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, if you spend the most time with these however many individuals, like your core friend group, you're going to be and share a lot of the same values, a lot of the same morals, stuff like that. Is that
because of the time you spent with them?
Right. It's because of that time you've invested into them. And then it's the same with wherever you get your entertainment and all that. So whether it be TV shows, social media, YouTube, what you choose.
This podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is where you get the majority of it. No, but because when you spend the most time with this show, and maybe this YouTube channel, now all of a sudden, similarly to how you might, your thought process, and even like depending on how much time you spend, even your moral conscience can be at least shifted slightly or affected, or start casting doubts. And I think that's strongly affected more than we care to admit, or even sometimes realize. By what content we consume, and that's a whole nother conversation. Is like what's considered content, how is it affecting you?
And I think it's interesting how the Word of God judges the thoughts and attitudes of those things. So why are we drawn to this? Why are we spending so much time with this? Why are we so entertained by this, or want this, or can't let this certain thought go, or anything like that? That's where it can be a little intimidating to us, I think, as humans, but just being like, oh man, okay. And he knows our motivations. We can't hide that. A lot of times you can be like, oh, well, what do you think if we did this? And it's like, you're kind of manipulating the situation or whatever. Like, I mean, I love my kids, but my kids are masters at this, where they're like, hey Dad, do you feel like watching this show or this show? He's like, wait a minute. Okay, you want to watch a show. I get what you're trying to do.
I'm looking
right?
at 2 options here. And
but in that moment, like sometimes we act like we're so smart or so like brilliant. Like, hey God, do you want to do this with my life or this with my life? And he's like, no, actually, you totally got it all wrong.
This with my life or this?
Like, no, you don't understand. And everything is laid bare on, in front of God. Like he understands and knows, like, okay, that's what's really motivating you. And where it can be kind of tricky sometimes is when God uncovers something or says, hey, this is taking too much of your time. I need you to shift your focus, or focus on something else, or get into my word, or, whatever, or let something go, or pick something up, invest time in this, stop wasting time on this. That can be really tricky. But when we understand that Jesus went through all those same things. Jesus went through all those same temptations and struggles of, hey, what about this? Or, hey, you should go here. Or, hey, you should do this. And still had a holy management of his time. Jesus didn't waste his time on anybody. Like, he spent it on everyone that he was with. And some of the people that he spent his time with really upset a lot of people. They're like, dude, do you realize who's washing your feet? Do you realize who's even like within 6 feet of you right now? Like,
I mean,
it's crazy, because the people that Jesus associated with and talked to and gave his time to were not good people. So, I don't know. That's really encouraging to me, to just to
whole,
know, like
factor relatability, and that And you know, I was just thinking just now, I was like, on the note of how he might be compared to in a lot of ways like a celebrity today. Those celebrities who but the reason certain people like certain ones is because of a factor of relatability, right? And that's what like makes you feel connected.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny that it's the same way here, and yet people have a hard time being like, you know, but he's God.
Yeah.
But even though like people will idolize these celebrities in a way, and I just think it's kind of interesting the contrasts there.
Yeah, seeing the humanity of Jesus, I think also helps us understand. Like he gets what we go through. Yeah. He can sympathize with us. He's not this like distant God that is perfect and can't identify with us at all. Like he is perfect, and he can identify with us because he went through everything that we went through.
And I think how you were you mentioned the whole. You know, spending time in the Word and with God versus how much time you're spending on maybe it's entertainment, whatever it may be. And it was, I forget his name, the guy that has a really good radio voice who spoke at youth group a few weeks back.
Nathaniel, that was
his name.
You've got a really good radio voice, Nathaniel,
facts.
after watching this.
No, but he said, and this really kind of struck me. He was like, he's like, I cannot bring myself anymore. You know, he made sure to state it was a process, but like, if I spend this amount of time, say, playing video games, then I have to spend that amount of time with God. That really hit me. Yeah. Like, it puts into perspective. It's like you can easily spend, just like you said, just 45 minutes, say, on one episode of a TV show. And let's be real here. We all know you don't stop at one.
Yeah. Oh, man, it was such a cliffhanger. I got to watch more.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, but sometimes you struggle to be in the Word for 15 minutes, you know? Because, well, I got to get out the door to work.
Yep.
And so it really, like, when you look at your priority list, it's really convicting, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and the Bible is so full of good things that we can glean from, understand, spend our time on, or even just rereading something where it's like, man, you can read the same passage 50 times and get something different out of it each time. That's good and wholesome and pure and valuable. But oftentimes we don't spend the time with it. Or my wife's reading through Chronicles right now, and I'm like, oh man, you know, there's some pretty like names, and you know, this is the son of this and this and this and this. But the genealogy is also really important too. There's some things in there where it's like it's chronicling. Is that the right word? Chronicling. It's a chronicle of time. It's
chronological order.
Yeah, there we go. There's a lineage, you know, and there's an importance on that too. Of okay, this person was this person's dad, and this person was this person's dad, and understanding the timeline of things too. There's an importance there. But,
yeah, for sure.
So,
I think people are often maybe discouraged when, like, because if you open a King James version of the Bible and you have had no experience reading the Bible, you're like, what am I reading here? How do I relate this to myself? But once you actually take that time, and I know that was for me, is there's this little bit of a barrier. It's like with anything else, you have to spend enough initial time to understand how to use it.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, then you can start reaping the benefits of finding, you know, like maybe how relatable, you know, Jesus was with you, or whatever it may be, to get that encouragement for your own life.
So this is totally your opinion. I'm not saying any of this is in the Bible or whatever, but how much time do you think you would recommend as a student? How much time do you think one should spend in the Bible if you really want to get the best out of it, right? And also looking at your day, it's not like you don't just hang out at home all the time. Like, well, now you do.
Now I do.
But if you were in your normal routine, your normal schedule, like how much time should somebody watching this expect to, like, hey, this is how much time I'm going to spend reading the Bible. Just reading the Bible. We're not talking about prayer. We're not talking about anything else.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
In the Word, how much time?
A day?
Do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, I've never really, I guess, thought about it, but just I know from my own like life, I would say 45 minutes to an hour a day is, for me, what I've found is, and there's been days, don't get me wrong, where it's like it's 30 minutes, and I think that's literally just that day. That's how it is but I think really going for like that hour is there's something about just that span of like 2 30-minute time periods, because I don't know what it is. At 30 minutes, you're like, but then for me at least, once you're into it 30 minutes, you're like, okay, like come on, like how long am I going to be here? But then as you keep going, I've found that around that 30-minute time period is when you really start getting like into it and like, wait a minute, what's going to happen next? Because the Bible is not all the time, like you said, maybe not in Chronicles, but it's actually a very exciting read. There's like the best stories in the world have been crafted from stories from the Bible. So actually they have the best stories, right? But and for me, it's like in my mind, if I go into it knowing, okay, I'm spending at least 45 minutes in it, it makes it a lot easier to allocate that time. You know what I mean? It's just like the same as working out. You're like, okay, this hour, and that's what it is for me. Is like I spend about an hour a day working out, right? And so I'm like, if I can't at least spend that in the Word, it's like, what's wrong here?
Yep.
And then that was for me, at least in my own life, what made that number specifically stand out to me.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I think it's a good starting point. Some people can give a little bit more time into that. Maybe they, or that's the other thing too. It's like, man, if you're reading through something and you're like, man, this is really gripping me. I can't wait to pick this up again. Maybe you get up an hour earlier the next day and you can spend 2 hours in the Word before you get started with your day or whatever. I think for most people, starting the morning, my wife is really good at this too. I want to start getting into this habit, but one of the first things she does in the morning when she gets up, she goes, gets her coffee, sits down on the couch, opens up the Bible, and reads. And the kids know, everybody knows, like, hey, don't interrupt mom. She's reading the Bible. That's what she starts her day with, and I think that's really good too, and a good use of time. But it's also then looking at the tithe principle and the whole thing behind that. That is giving the first, the most important, or the most valuable piece of, like, this is how you're starting your day. For some people, it's the end of the day that's the most valuable, right? That's when you hang out with friends, that's when you do all this stuff. Man, if that's what you give to God, if that's what you say, okay, this is going to be my devotion time, I am not letting anybody else take from God in this time frame. But really, I think there's a reason why we call it devotions too, is we're setting aside a chunk of time where we're not letting anything else interrupt that. No shows, no phone calls. I've known some pastors and preachers where they will turn off their phone and have zero connection with this during their devotion time or anything else. They'll totally set it aside. Or for their Sabbath, they will they won't use their phone at all. So when they're taking their day of rest in reverence to God, it's like they have zero technology involved with that. And it's all,
it makes sense. I think that's a good habit to get into as well. Now, just so you know, we have been rolling for about 20 minutes.
Okay, we can move on to the next few points here, and then the reason why all this stuff is so valuable, and it, again, kind of in my opinion, is that, well, it's not really my opinion. It's fact. Time, we don't know how much time we have, right? That's a fact. None of us know exactly. There's some people where we can assume, like, right, I can assume that you're 18. That you're going to live quite a bit longer. Like, right, you can make some assumptions. Tragedy happens, things happen. We don't know. That doesn't mean we run around like wondering, oh, am I going to die today? It's like, that's not how we're called to live. But we are called to live in such a way that we have a value on time. We don't know how much we have, but in that, time should be super, super valuable. So even you spending the time helping me make this podcast and how we spend our time reading the Bible or that kind of stuff. The reason that it's so valuable and that makes it so, like, wow, is every minute that we've spent doing this podcast.
Every light bulb that we
every
broke.
light bulb that we break. You can't go back in time and retrieve that. Yeah. And so oftentimes we'll say things of like, oh, I'm just trying to save some time. You can't do that. Where you don't have a time account that you can just like put it in the bank. Yeah. Right. You can invest time into things, but once you invest it, once you spend the time, you don't get a receipt. Well, you might get a receipt of like, hey, this is how much time you spent on your phone, or how much you're like, ooh, I went over my minutes by this much.
The last couple of weeks, that's really been.
Yeah. Right. A lot of people have unlimited, right? But we don't have an unlimited amount of time. We don't have this like infinite amount of, oh, this is, whatever. And so we have to value it, and we have to value it, I believe, more than we do. and appreciate it more than we do. Because man, some of the most cherished times in my life, I was younger and I didn't even fully appreciate the family vacations or the time with my grandparents or the time with my cousins, or and these are people that are, for some of them, they're gone now. I don't get to spend time with my mom's side with her parents anymore. They were minutes away. There were so many times where I thought, oh, I should swing in. No, I'm busy. I'll see them, later or whatever. Yeah. I don't get to see them anymore now. And so you want to make sure that the time that you're investing with people that you love and care about, that, hey, you don't know. You're not guaranteed that you're going to have all this time to spend with people. That doesn't mean we run around paranoid, especially given the current circumstances and everything like that. But it does mean that we appreciate and value and are grateful for all the time.
I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is don't be paranoid, but also don't take for granted.
Yes.
There's, there's that in between where, because I know and I think when you are young, just speaking from my own life, like right now, it's very easy to, because you're young, and I'm not even just talking about your own life, but just like, you're like, oh, there's a lot of time. And then, I know that's been something I've been thinking about myself, is like on my dad's side, for example, his parents, my grandparents, are definitely getting a lot older. And I almost get into this mindset though of like, well, I have to do this. I don't have time for them. But I haven't lived with that regret yet, per se, on that level of like losing somebody and wishing I had spent more time with them. But I've seen it in other people's lives, and that's where it kind of hits you. And it's like, wait a minute, this is a very real thing that I think when we don't look at time as a given amount, because that's the thing, we don't know how much we have, so we don't think about it.
Yep. So we think there's an abundance where there really could be,
but there might not be. And that's the thing, is like the saying, as stupid as it is, everyone dies on time, has really resonated with myself. Because I think about it, I'm like, it's an interesting topic when you. But
no, that's good. So I think the call here, or the encouragement that we're trying to give you guys here, is that appreciate moments in time. Appreciate the moments where you sit down and have dinner together as a family, or you get to go have coffee with somebody that you haven't seen in a while, or once these restrictions and everything else are lifted, that we get to gather again as a youth group. Like I can't honestly say that I didn't ever not appreciate the time that I got hanging out with Thrive students and everything like that. I love every single minute, and I've been pretty open about that. And I know a lot of you guys have really appreciated that too. But when that time gets shifted, or when that time gets taken to where, oh, you can't spend your time on this anymore, it definitely increases your level of like, wow, I really enjoyed that, or wow, I really missed that person, or wow, I really wish that I could just kind of go sit down in a restaurant. I mean, when would we have ever been able to have such a wake-up call like this too, where we're like, wow, I really value that time that I got to spend doing this. But also it's a gift in a way of, now all of a sudden we have even more time freed up to where we'd normally be spending it on other things. And man, I was busy. Looking at my schedule in March, I was like just slam packed. So then all this stuff happened. I'm like, wow, okay, now none of it's going to happen. Yeah. And in a way it was discouraging. Yeah, it was happy and sad. It was sad in the way of like, man, I had a ton of relational stuff that we were going to do, and it was going to be really exciting. Beach trip. Revenge on Ian. Wait, what? Oh, nothing. Stick of destiny. Whatever.
Ian, I'm going to kill you.
That's not a threat. Figuratively.
I'm going to grind your face into
the sand. No.
Yeah. Lovingly.
Lovingly. But now we don't get to spend our time in the ways that we used to be able to spend it. Yeah. And I mean, it can be a gift if we look at it that way, as, okay, now we have even more time to invest. And some of you guys already are. Like I'm so encouraged to see how many of the Thrive students are sharing Bible verses, or sharing positive, encouraging things, or sharing pictures, or just appreciating these things to where it's like, okay, this is healthy, this is good. And kind of leads us to that last verse. But do you have anything you want to add while I'm looking up the last verse?
About just time in general?
Just time in general. Any wrap-up thoughts?
I mean, I think you did a really good job of, hitting how we don't know how much we have, and then also like how you obviously related it back to Jesus and stuff. I think, especially just from the perspective of a young person, I think taking from Jesus, like, be extremely intentional with your time. And in fact, what I did, it was a couple months ago, and it'll hit you if you do this. At least it did for me. Is I literally every 30-minute window, I wrote down what I had. I quickly just typed into my phone what I had done for that 30-minute window. You would be shocked how much time you spend doing just complete garbage, like whether it be scrolling Instagram, like whatever it is. There was I think it was something like, it was like 3 hours or something, just of doing nothing like beneficial for myself, my relationship with God, someone. It was nothing like others. And so I think realizing the amount of things you can waste your time on also is a big thing to just be mindful of.
Yeah. I reflecting on time spent with other people too. I think that's where fortunately, I have very little regrets as far as the time I spent with people. But if anything, you look and you're like, oh, I wish I would have spent more time with this person. Like, I didn't think that my cousin was going to get murdered. I didn't think that my cousins were going to be gone so soon. Like, I wish I would have spent more time with them. I wish I could have had more time with them. But you can't change what's happened. You can change what you do in the future. And I think for a lot of us, it's like, man, I want to have as few people as possible have to learn their lesson of time management that way, where they think, oh, I've got all this time to hang out with this person, or I got all this time to do this, or I got all this time to do that, and then all of a sudden, whoop, like it's gone. And you don't want to find yourself on the other end of that, because it can put you in a spot that's full of regret and remorse, and that's not a place where you want to stay. Just because you've wasted time. I think time is officially wasted if you don't learn a lesson from it, or you don't grow from it, or you just kind of like, whatever, didn't get anything out of that. That's where it can be really tragic, because time is so valuable. And if you use your time and you buy something that has no value, that's pretty sad, right? Or if you lose that time with people. So not staying there is important. And that's kind of where this verse, a lot of you guys are familiar with this verse in Philippians 4 through 8. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else to add after that, but
I think the thing with that one is just like what you spend your time thinking about too is super important.
Yep.
But
your thought resources are good too.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, guys, we love you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the time that you spent watching this whole video. I hope you've watched all of it and gleaned from it whatever you...
I broke a light bulb filming this thing.
You broke a light bulb. There's a lot of time and energy that went into this episode. But we thank you guys for watching, and are excited to see what God unrolls for us for next week.
Yes.
So.
Ciao, baby.
Ciao.